Welcome to part 4 of the Gridworld case study. This is actually the final chapter of this case study that we need to know. Although you'll see a part 5, that's actually on an exam that's not offered anymore. So part 4 has the last material that we need to know backwards and forwards, and some of it is fairly complicated. So far we've looked at basic bugs who just walk around, leave flowers. We've enhanced those bugs by making them move in squares or circles. And we've taken a look at other things that we have to work with, the grid, how locations work, how actors work, and what they extend and inherit down to us. We've taken a look at adding some other basic behavior by adding jumping bugs and interacting with the grid. But in Chapter 4, we're going to put all of these things together to add new and exciting behavior to our actors. There's a couple of classes included in Part 4. We've got the critter. We need to understand not only how they work, but how all of their code works. You absolutely should expect not only to see questions about critter on the exam, but likely to have to extend it yourself. We're going to take a look at a chameleon critter, which is one example of extending critter to add different behavior. And we'll take a look at crab critter, another example of extending critter to add totally different behavior in terms of movement. So the first thing we want to do is just run Critter Runner and just watch the critters. And you can see they look like little squirrels, which is very cute, and just watch what they do. I can see my runner here. They've added a bunch of preset objects, a couple rocks, a couple critters, specified locations for them, and some flowers. So just step through it and see what happens. Hey, where'd that flower go? Keep watching them. As they move around, they move next to rocks. Nothing happens there. Keep going. What they're actually doing is they eat flowers. When they get next to a flower, they'll eat them. Let's try some other things. Let's see. We can add some flowers back in, and I can see these guys are going to devour those flowers. And the other thing we notice is that these guys tend to move fairly randomly. They're not moving in a straight direction, just like the bugs were. So we've got different movement, we've got different behavior. They actually interact with the objects around them. And what we've got to understand is how all that works so that we can make it happen for ourselves. All of that you can see again in the appendix. And there's a lot of lines to critter, but you really just got to know them backwards and forwards, and we'll walk through them. So the very basics, critter extends actor. We can see he's not extending bug. He doesn't act like a bug. There's no point in extending bug. And we'll start with the act method. Act is where everything begins. Remember, step is going to call act every time. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a check. Hey, let's go get grid. Remember, this inherits down from actor, gets a reference to the grid, the environment that I'm in. If there's no grid, I'm going to stop. This means something has happened. Somehow I have been removed from the grid. Maybe I've been eaten by somebody else. Who knows? But if I don't have a grid, I shouldn't be doing anything because something has gone wrong. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to call a getActors method. This is one of my methods. This is something new. We're not inheriting this down from actor. So we need to understand this pretty well. GetActors. Let's hop right over to GetActors and see what that does. What this actually does is this goes to the grid. Hey grid, get me neighbors. We've looked at this method already. I give it a location. It gives me all the actors around that location. And I'm going to use getLocation. That's my location method. This inherited down from actor. This is going to give me an array list of actor type objects that are my neighbors. Pretty handy if I'm going to do something like eat those flowers that are next to me. I'll come back up here and I'll put it in a temporary variable, actors. So now I've got that list. Great. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to process those actors. We can see I can't just do anything detailed with them because remember, there were rocks around us and we didn't do anything with those. And when I bumped up another critter, I didn't do anything to him either. But the flowers, we sure ate those. So process actors is going to hop over to another one of my new methods, not inherited from actor. New methods that's going to do specific behavior. Let's go see what it does. Here's process actors. I take in that list of actors, remember, that we got in that other method. A very simple for each loop, right? Go through my loop. Each time I'm going to grab the actor in that array list. And here's what I'm going to say, and this is a handy thing to do. I can say instance of. This will tell me if the actor is actually a rock or a critter. Remember, they're polymorphic, right? So even though these guys are in actor variables, I'm interested in what they really are. Because I don't want to eat rocks. They're not delicious. And I don't want to eat critters because they're probably mean. So if it is not A is an instance of a rock, and it is not an instance of critter. So if it's not a rock and it's not a critter, we'll eat him. We'll go to him, the other guy, and we'll tell him to remove himself from the grid. He's off the environment, and effectively, I've eaten him. Once process actors is done, we got to go right back to where I was, right here, this semicolon right here. Now, I've eaten what I'm going to eat. That's the first thing we do. And now I got to figure out where am I going to go. So I'm going to call my handy getMoveLocations method. Remember, this guy didn't move straight. He went all over the place. This again, brand new method to critter. Let's see how it works. I'm going to go to the grid and say, hey grid, get me all of the empty adjacent locations around where I'm at now. Very handy grid method. If we didn't know these grid methods, this would be a huge hassle to do. Very simple, and it's going to return a list, an array list, of those location objects. Great. This will come back, and I'll put that in a temporary array list variable. So now I've got all of these empty places around me. Awesome. But now, remember, they moved randomly, so I've got to pick one of those places. They've actually broken this out into two methods, and it makes sense, because, for example, we may want to not move randomly. We may want to just change how the selection works. If everything was bundled in getMoveLocations, our opportunities for extending and changing the critter and overriding would be limited. So we've got getTheMoveLocations in one spot and pick one in another spot. Let's hop down to selectMoveLocations and see how he works. Taking the array list, I'll say, hey array list, what's your size? If it was empty, maybe there was nowhere around me to move, maybe I'm boxed in by other critters or rocks, I'm going to return my current location. It means I couldn't move anywhere, but I've got to have a location to make everything else work. So I'm just going to sit put, stay at my existing location. Otherwise, we'll keep going. I'll get a random number, multiply it by my possibilities, how big the list was, turn it into an int, right? So we truncate it, and then I'll go to the list and get that random element, and I'll give it back. So I randomly picked one of the locations in this list. Come back to where I was, I'll put it in location loc, and then I will call makeMove. MakeMove will take that location and perform the movement for me. And if we go through critter, I can see makeMove down here. Takes the location, so long as it's an actual location. Maybe it was null, maybe something happened, I broke my code somewhere. If it was null, I've messed up, and this guy, we got to get him out of here because he is a mess, and he'll kill himself. Otherwise, he'll call move2. Move2 is a method we inherited down from actor. Move2 handles the movement for me in the grid. Very handy. This lesson, this part, is fairly long, so at this point I'm going to break it into two pieces. In the next part we'll take a look at chameleon critter and we'll take a look at crab critter. Two new ways of taking what we have with critter already and extending them and changing their behavior to suit our needs.